Good day, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a really, really exciting event. It's going to be one of a series, okay? Things we'd all like to know with Joanna and Chris. So I'm Chris Byrne and...
Hello, everybody. It's Joanna here. Thank you so much all for your questions. We have literally a ton of questions to go through. Obviously, we're not going to be able to take care of all of them, but this will be one of many sessions. So feel free to resend those questions to both Chris and I. And let's see what we can do for you guys. Enjoy.
There we go. So I think we're going to, as Joanna said, we've had loads. And some of the questions that we've had are common to many of us. And some of the questions really would warrant an hour's show all on their own. So we're going to mix it up a little bit and we'll see where we go. When you're watching this, do listen to the questions because, as I said, many of the questions that we've received are common to a lot of us. They're about development, they're about abundance, they're about love and acceptance. So you may find a gem of wisdom from Spirit in someone else's question for you. Right, so I think we're going to kick off with the first question with you, Joanna.
All right, so let me start. But before I start, Chris and I decided that we were going to tackle the questions in front of us, but we're also going to build on that answer so that as many of you listening as you are, you can kind of apply it to your life. So we're trying to make a specific question very generic and that at the end of the day, it benefits everybody. So with that said, so the first question is, Yolanta Chimoshko, I believe is the last name. Okay, my apologies for pronunciation. What can I do to attract a better life for me? All right, so let me just tune into that question. And to me, it represents a level of seriousness there, because what I hear you say to me is, how do I live? What do I live for? So no one can say to you, this is what you do to attract a better life, because you first have to understand where you stand. So you need to identify what it is in your life that is currently not working so that you can figure out how to prevent yourself from getting what you want. So it's a question that literally covers everything, but it's a question that cannot be answered with just one sentence. It's literally like a layered sandwich. Chris, does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And I, as you were talking, I randomly shuffled, and the card that came out for me was the Four of Discs, which really does mirror what you've just said, Joanna. So it's about layers, isn't it? It's about getting a strong foundation and feeling secure. It's about tapping into what your heart desires, and it's about making that manifest. Okay, that's the basic formula for any stability in life. We first of all got to understand where our foundation's at. Now that may look to you, sorry, was it Yolanda?
Yolanda, yes.
Yolanda. So that may look to you like, well, I don't feel stable at the moment because I may have a uncertain financial position, or maybe I don't know where I stand with family or friends. Maybe I've moved to a new area and I feel like a bit of an outsider. So work on getting that foundation in place. That's really important. The Four of Discs is a card of foundation. Discs relate to the material experience. Okay, the next thing, which is the hardest thing of all, is to understand what your heart desires. Now, we can make that a little simpler by just making a list of the things that you love, whether you do them or not. What would I love to do? Now, you may find yourself saying, well, I just want to sit and paint pictures of trees all day long, or walk in the woods and listen to the bird song, or I want to start a multi-billion-dollar worldwide corporation. Whatever works for you, the heart's desire is unique. And then we have to take it to the crown. Now, the crown's influence or experience is of connection to everything. So we have to look into our mind, I call it the ego mind. Where's the belief that you can't have what you desire? And just for a few seconds or a few moments every day, you go, how would my life look if I didn't have that belief? And that's what you image, that's what you imagine. And that's what brings it into manifestation. Joanna.
I was chuckling when you were talking, not because of what you were saying, but because there were two cards that flew out at me when I was asking for the emotional component of Yolanta. And the card of stubbornness, which is also 4-0, came up. And when I tuned into this message, what I felt was that this particular person is constantly looking for answers outside of her. And when we do that, we usually arrive at things we don't want. Why? Because we base our life on somebody else's idea of what is important, what's supposed to happen, what you're supposed to do. In other words, I have noticed over the last several months, and I've been paying attention, that people fundamentally do not know how to ask themselves questions. So in this case, for Yolanta, you need to be able to sit down, be brutally honest with yourself and ask this: what is it that I want at this time of my life? And then choose to acknowledge what is currently making you escape from it. That's an interesting way of how it came out. Or what is causing you to detract it from you or not attract it to you. And those can only be found inside. You also have the card of emptiness, and it's shown to me kind of in this position, which tells me, again, there is a sense of stubbornness, not wanting to look inside. And at the end of the day, that's where everything is, right? So
true.
That's the answer to that question, and this pretty much covers every single area of one's life, right? Personal responsibility is what comes up to me. Yeah. What does a triangle mean to you, Chris? What does a triangle mean, or a pyramid? Okay. It's a very stable foundation, but...
Very stable foundation. And as we go up, we can take this in two ways. So an upturned triangle is a symbol of spiritual power. Mm. And you take the downward facing triangle, and that's material power. And when you put those two together, you get the Star of David. That's where that symbolism comes from. But Beautiful. Also, it's about taking all the broad experiences at the base of the triangle and focusing that into a pinpoint desire. So take a inventory of all the experiences that are going on in your life, the good and the bad. Take them and then see where they all kind of meet. So are you finding that wherever you go, there is a lack of money being highlighted, or are you working in a job role that doesn't fulfill you? Is it that there are lots of things going on that broad base that don't fulfill you? So what if you focused your intent? There's normally one thing that needs to change. Now, in psychology, there is an absolute truth that you cannot change anything in the external until you change one thing up here: the thought, the belief. So a lot of people that get told, for instance, money is the root of all evil. Well, I don't want that in my life then, do I? But why am I poor? Money's not the root. No, money's just an energy. It's the same as anything. It's what you do with it that matters. So look at the beliefs, look at the paradigm that you've got. And sometimes when we change one thought, we change that paradigm. What does it mean to you to be stable? That's the first step. There may also be, I am being told from another place, there may also be some emotional, I nearly swore then, I do beg your pardon, some emotional, let's call it nonsense, some emotional entrapment or stagnation around you, which is draining your energy. And sometimes we have to say, look, these people aren't ready for the change, so I'm going to go about my business and manufacture the life that I desire. The only way you're going to learn the lessons, Yolanda, is to go on that path. And if other people won't come with you, that's not a problem, because maybe they're not for you on that journey. So I hope that makes some sense and resonates with you a little.
The beauty with this, she can listen to it again, and the symbol of a pyramid or a triangle was given to me for her. So good luck, Yolanda. Hope that was helpful. Chris, now do you want to go on your side? Okay. We're going to go back and forth between our emails.
Yeah, so this is from Mai. Thank you for your question. Right, and it's about second Saturn return. So this is kind of astrology-based question. I made a video about Saturn. I did a live last Sunday. I'll put a link up there if you want to go and look at it. Saturn plays a major factor in our lives, but Marlene's question is, she says, I'm enjoying your new format. Thank you very much. Now, in the last reading you gave me, you talked about my second Saturn return. Can you explain in your next upcoming video what that entails and how? Okay, how this may affect me. Well, again, this is something which is common to many. So, for those of you that don't know, Saturn takes 29.5 years to come back to the place where it was when you were born, natal return. So, the stages of that in a nutshell, we've got sort of 13 to 16, first opposition, teenage angst. 28 to 32, first return. That's normally when we grow up. So if you're watching this at 26, don't panic. You're not grown up yet. You'll be okay. All right. But that's when we start to wake up and think, actually, there are things I want. If we don't attend to that at the next opposition, 43 to 48, then we can experience what some people lovingly refer to as a midlife crisis. But the second Saturn return is very powerful, particularly for women. That occurs between 58 and 62. It sometimes is very tied in with the menopause, but it's the empowerment and the freedom to be yourself. So what that means in a nutshell, and I'd have to look back at your chart, Marlene, which I think I may still have, and I'll do that and email you under at a different time, but it's about taking the empowerment. What does that mean? Well, all the things I've wanted to do, all the things that would really express my inner desire, whether that's dressing in a way that's unique to you, whether that's following a different pathway. Because now you're in a phase of your life where, unless you had children very late, you now have no responsibilities to other people. It's all about you. And particularly for women, you come into that phase now where you've got the energy of the maiden, you've got the experience and wisdom of the mother. You move into the phase that's called the crone phase, where you can use all that wisdom and knowledge to create you and the version of you that is the best. So that's my take on that. Joanna, what have you got for that?
Oh, Chris, you're the master in astrology. The only thing I know about astrology is the 12 signs and the corresponding little information. And the rest I get from spirit, which I then have to look up to feel comfortable with it. So that's your deal.
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot now, and I'm going to say, just you give us a little bit of information, and I'll let you know what you're on the money.
You mean with that particular question?
Absolutely.
What the Saturn return means?
Yeah.
Okay. I have a vision, and the vision I have is I'm pushing something away and I'm saying no longer. So something that was, and I am now choosing not to have any part of it, whether it is psychological, emotional, physical. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Really?
I pulled the Ace of Wands out, which is empowerment, tapping into that energy that excites you. You see, we've been told many falsehoods over the course of our lives, haven't we? One of which is that age is, when you get older, you kind of go downhill. But I always look to there's a great piece of Chinese wisdom, and it says that it's more fun to climb a 200-year-old tree than a 50-year-old tree. So as we grow older, we become more interesting. We might become a little gnarlier, but we are more interesting. There's more depth to us. And as I say, that second return, particularly for women, that is when you really enter your Wonder Woman phase, okay? So if you're watching this thinking, oh, you know what? I'm getting older. Look at the wrinkles. Don't worry about it, okay? Because that's your roadmap of experiences. That's your scrapbook.
Mm-hmm.
And you will, if you think back to when you were 13, 14, when you thought you were all grown up, even at 30, you look back on that age and you go, oh, man. So it's good. All right. Age is experience, is wisdom.
As you're talking, I'm getting more information. And actually the feeling that comes up for me is a sense of sadness. And the sense of sadness is because I am losing or letting go of something that was once really important to me in terms of my identity. And there is this feeling that's coming up that there is this, because it's all you've known, but you choose to lovingly push it away because you now can see it. It's no longer just you can feel it that it doesn't serve you. So it's not a comfortable thing that I'm feeling. It's not supposed to be, is it?
No, it's not. No.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very freeing, but it's uncomfortable at first.
Well, it's change.
Wow.
Whenever
Yeah.
we experience something new, we immediately are in fear because it's something we don't know. And
Yeah.
one of Saturn's aspects, it is the gateway. I don't want to bore you with astrology theory, but it forms the gateway between the kind of material, personal experience and the kind of transcendental or generational experiences. In short, what that means is your focus changes, like particularly for you, Marlene, your focus changes from what people think about me or what I need to be doing to actually I'm going to live for me. So it's that maybe I'm here to do a particular thing now, and that is, we're all here to do a particular thing, and that is to be ourselves, to be the authentic version of ourselves. So good luck with that. I will look at your chart and I will email you in a few days about that. Okay, let's have the next question.
So the next question is interesting because I normally don't get into legalities and health in, public forums. But for some reason, they're asking me to address this. So this is from Renee Hills. And the question is, thank you, Joanna and Chris. You're welcome. Thank you for your question. What can I do to heal my body from autoimmune and rheumatoid arthritis, inflammation, and pain? So when I tuned into it, and this, I can only give so much in this context because it's not appropriate. So Renee, I will give you what I can. Chris is already standing by with more information. What I am being asked to say is this. When you look at autoimmune as a response to something, what would you say you are protecting yourself from? In other words, and it's creating an anxiety in here. There is something inside of yourself that you are constantly in an inner conflict with. It's eating you from inside out. It's like your whole body is inflamed. It turns on itself. I hear the words anger. I'm not calling you angry, but I am sensing there is unresolved anger, and I want to start crying, which is taking me to my second chakra. That's safety, security, trust. And I got chills all over me. So they're not giving me cure for that. I wish that could happen. They are saying to you, be kinder to yourself, which tells me you are someone who is very hard on yourself, and it's a result of something traumatic. Now, we all have trauma, so I don't want to get too, so that's not to discount you either, but there is something inside of you that you are constantly rejecting about yourself. Whether it is because you don't want to feel, whether it's because you don't want to acknowledge something, whether you fear, whatever it is, that is what I'm being asked to say. What I'm also being asked to say to you, and please check this with your doctor, because I'm just a speaker. So I see meat, and then I'm being shown acid. So I don't know if it's saying look into perhaps reducing red meat, something to do with acidity in your body. So kind of look that up. Notice I didn't say a whole much of anything, but I said a lot. So I'm going to leave that because then I have to go a little bit deeper, which I can in a personal session, but I won't do it here. It's too personal. So that's my part. Chris?
Yeah, okay. So the card that came out was the Magician. Okay, I love the way you worded the question too, because you're not saying, how do I cure myself? You're saying, how do I make it better? That's great. So already you've taken personal responsibility. Now, the Magician is intrinsically, it's a state of mind. We need to focus on what we want sometimes, not what we've got. It's very easy when you've been chronically unwell for some time to forget how it feels to be well. So it's very important to re-establish, if you can, that memory of wellness. That's intrinsic for any kind of healing process. Okay. Now, I often talk in public, and one of the things I say, I talk about arthritis, and this dialogue can cause some of the most vicious responses from certain people. But it goes like this. It's been known for some time that your body reproduces itself at the cellular level all the time. the fluid inside your eyeball every 6 or so days, 6 weeks, I forget which one, your stomach lining, everything, even your bones. Biologists aren't certain as to how long it takes for the whole body. Some say 9 months, some say 2 years, some say 9 years. But nonetheless, every cell of your body is reproduced. Old becomes new. So you go to the doctor and you say, doctor, you know, I've been getting these kind of hot feelings, pain in my joints. I've been feeling generally unwell. And he says, hey, you know, you've got arthritis. And you go, okay, so what do I need to do to cure it? And they go, well, there is no cure. Now, you believe that, right? Because we're invested in what our healthcare professionals tell us. And sometimes that's right. But then because your mind is so powerful and you begin to forget what it is to be well, you just start to reproduce and recreate the pattern you believe. Now, this is when people can get really, really upset. So are you telling me that I gave myself cancer? Well, who gave it to you then? I didn't give it to you. You didn't give it to you. It's not a question of taking things personally, because the other thing about the magician is realizing that there is a process to follow. And we must lose and it's hard, I know it's hard, but we must try just for 1 minute every day to lose the why me. Okay, you can't be a magician and a victim. I'm sure you're not a victim, but these strengthening thoughts will enable you to do what the magician does well, and that's take the impossible dream and make a version of it in reality. I think Joanna's absolutely right. Look at what you're putting into your system, but look also at, think about in its simplest term, arthritis is a stiffening, a crystallization of the joints, okay? A stiffening, an inability to move. Did you, when you were younger, go through some unacceptable situations where you just couldn't move? And it may be that some work on the subconscious level there can help you. Maybe not cure you, but certainly help you, because your immune system, when it turns against us, it can be incredibly painful and problematic. Joanna, over to you.
I asked for an emotion of what is connected to Renee. It's 4/4, it's called secrecy, but I already know what the message is. So there's several things that came up with this. Number one, the clearest message is, what are you holding back? What are you holding from being seen? What are you choosing not to pursue because afraid of something is going to happen? What are you suppressing? But the other thing that I'm getting is, and obviously I wouldn't be surprised if this goes all the way back to your mom when she was severely stressed when she was pregnant. And remember when I talked about the second chakra, the most predominant color here is green and orange. So there is some healing that needs to you might want to look at your safety, security, and trust around that, particularly when you were little. Because it feels to me like it's generational. Now, that doesn't mean you can't effectively deal with it, but it does mean you have to recognize your patterns, and they're showing me they're somehow connected to your mom. Chris, are you getting anything on that?
Yeah, I'm just in the background. I've just pulled another card, and I got the Ace of Cups here.
Ace again.
So it's an interesting card because it's about flow. Now, the Ace of Cups, it relates to all things obviously feminine. So I do believe that in this version, you can see the dove here bringing something in, dropping it into the cup. Now, that can be an idea given to you from another person that will sit inside you and do sometimes good things, sometimes not so good things. So look back at those early experiences. And one of the ways for me, the best way to access that is to think about, call to mind your situation, you know, and just let your memories go back. Just take some time, let your memories flip back, and you will come to a point where you remember something that perhaps gave you this belief or this energy that's holding that back, because it's, you know, we take on so much subconsciously that we're unaware of, but it manifests in our physicality. And that's why some people can look at people and they can say, well, yeah, I can see you suffer from, they call them medical intuitives in circles. And what they're really doing is they're tapping into the subconscious field that you are producing, and that's where a lot of our illnesses come from. We can access it, you can access it, and sometimes you need help, and sometimes you just need to sit down and just sit with it, But the other thing I've got to say to you, don't fear it. Never fear it.
Yeah.
Because it's, there's an awful lot of kind of movement in the current sort of spiritual climate to be completely well. If you're not completely well, then somehow you've failed the exam. Well, illness is a journey and a profound gift. And if you read the stories of people like Sai Baba, other people that have become, to use the current vernacular, woke, they've all gone through trauma or illness. So sometimes it can be a product of us not expressing our truth. Like, if I don't do this stuff on a regular basis, I get aches and pains.
Mm-hmm.
I feel my energy starts to feel low. And the minute I start doing this work, everything's great. You see? So if I take like a month out and don't do anything, I will suffer from it. So maybe you could look at, maybe there's some things that you need to be manifesting in your life as well.
There's some anxiety, I believe, with her as well, anxiousness, but I think we should just move on to the next question.
Okay.
Do you have one ready? Because I have one that kind of sort of falls into this, but I'll wait for you.
Let's go with that one then. Yeah.
Okay. So some of you have not given me your full names. I just have an email, TNERH1. And the question is, I would like to know how to find my purpose or even my talents. I am really struggling to find a happy future. I'm tired of just working and not really living. So I love this question because it is something I see every single day. In other words, what you're really saying to me is, I don't know what to do. So what comes to me first and foremost is, let me just break this down. And this, I believe this question is going to connect with many, 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 many people. And the answer, I believe, is going to be applicable to all. What does it mean for you to have a purpose? Now, you may think about this, but I will follow up with saying a purpose is a felt perception. In other words, it's a feeling that you have when you are involved in something that inspires you, okay? So chances are the reason why you are lost because you are not paying attention to what or how you feel about you, your surroundings, and what you want from life. When that happens, we have this fundamental disconnect between the logical mind and what the heart wants, and we find ourselves somewhere in between, and it's like we're bouncing off. So to answer your question in particular is, you need to first allow yourself to feel the things you do not want to feel. Why? Because part of you finding your purpose is driven by your intuition. However, it tells me you have not been listening. Now, I'm also going to say that the bigger picture is, you're not really out of purpose. You're not really off the road. You're not really off the map. You're still living and you're on your path. You are just now in the process where you are fundamentally shifting and changing, and you need to find different ways of expressing your own soul and its purpose from that which you've done before. So you're at the crevice. Generally, we spend time standing where we are because it's, well, let's face it, it's comfortable. But life is about creation, which is about expansion. So naturally, we're going to, at age 20, we're going to like very different things than at age 50, but we want to keep ourselves in those boxes. So what you feel is very normal. It is very natural. You're supposed to feel that. What you're struggling with is not knowing how to get to the other side. And the first and fundamental thing is for you to feel. For that is where the intuition comes in. And intuition will lead you to various things. It will not put something in front of you and say, here, have it, because part of your journey is to learn how to tap into this gift called intuition. So again, it's trust. There it is.
There it is. And it's interesting you use that the idea of the ravine or the crevasse, right? There is a phrase that we've all heard, right? Leap of faith.
Mm-hmm.
Many people use that leap of faith to get out of awkward questions. But really, the leap of faith comes from this idea that there is, because we've evolved this way, there is a gap, a perceived gap. It's not a real gap, but there is a perceived gap between our creative spirit and our material existence. Now, those of you that know a little bit about Kabbalah will remember the tree of knowledge of good and evil, sometimes referred to as the tree of life, and the 10 spheres contained within it. Now, the bottom 2 spheres, okay, so we've got the foundation sphere and the sphere of Malkuth, but the 2 spheres either side of that, they are the leap of faith. How do you take what you desire and begin to make it manifest? So let's get particular, subject specific for you. The 8 of Wands and the 8 of Cups and the 4 of Wands come out, all right? Pay attention to the things emotionally that are holding you back. Did you come from a family that weren't particularly creative, but you've got this desire to create? But what you've got to do, okay, is make that foundation. 4 is foundation. So it's not about making money. That will come as a byproduct of you being happy. So do more things that make you happy. And here's another simple trick you can begin to employ. Whatever you do, wherever you are, write down 2 or 3 things that you love doing. Okay, so for me, it would be playing music or listening to music, doing some exercise, going to take photography in nature, for instance. I will do those 3 things in some small or large part every single day, regardless. I put my affirmation out there. This is what's going to happen. I'm going to do these things I love, or 1 thing, or 5 things, whatever it is. And you do those things every day. And what that does, it sends a message out to your higher self. I'm doing this. I start to live for me. When you start to enjoy what you do, and you overcome those belief systems that you've carried that tell you you can't, or you're not good enough, whatever it is, then you'll begin to manifest that instinct, that insight and intuition that Joanna talks about. Okay, sometimes it's just simply about following the coincidences. Okay, I think you've got something to say, Joanna.
A card popped up for her. That's what I was going like this, because I was jumping out of my skin. I was chuckling. I love this. I'm like, hi. Complete surrender. And the way it came up right away, I felt she's resisting. So complete surrender is all about surrendering the ego. No, it does not mean giving one up. You need it. You need it for a specific purpose, though. So the ego we often associate with what it wants, what it needs, because it's selfish. It needs to feel safe. You are still holding on to the old beliefs. And as long as you continue to do that, you will always find yourself searching, because what you're searching for cannot happen over there. It's inside. You need to surrender your ego. You need to connect with your higher self, whatever that means to you, whether it's your God, whatever you want to call it. And that will be your truth. And that can be accessed through intuition. Chris was giving you good examples. Obviously, to go to the details, We'd have to speak to you with you one-on-one. But there's a need for you to let go of what is no longer in your life, needed in your life, but you need to allow it to go. Think of it this way. You're plugged into what you're doing, but you're trying to do something else. Well, until you change your focus and plug yourself to what you want, you can't have it, right? That's kind of the imagery they're showing me. If you are stubborn, as in your case, listen, we want safety and security. You may want the moon and the stars. Unless you're willing to let go of what's preventing you from it, once again, you're never going to reach it. And no one can give you that, because it has to come from inside. Someone can come into your life and make you happy just for you to realize that 6 months down the road, whoops, sorry, here we go again. Oh, hang on 1 second.
Talk about yourselves, people.
We're having a party here. Just so find out in a few months that even though you have everything you've asked for, you're unhappy again, right? So I feel like I could go on and on, but I hope that answers your question.
Self-belief is really important, and
Mm-hmm.
self-belief needs to evolve into self-knowing. So I'll give you a personal, for instance. Okay, I used to sit down before any reading. I'd be like, right, I've got to prove that I can do this. I've got to, I've got to give them the best because they need that. And I was like, you know what, no, because then that's going to make you stressed out. And I'm just going to go with the knowing that I can do this. And it's not about the outcome, it's about how you feel inside. That's really, really important. So I hope that makes sense. All right. And again, if you're hearing these questions and you think I'd like more, then it might be time to book a personal reading with either Joanna or I. And we kind of work in different ways, but we work to a similar aim, and that is to get you to the place you need to be. We won't do it for you, but we'll make you remember how to do it. Okay, so you can look back down the line and go, look what I did, and it's really cool. Okay,
Chris, you also have courses coming up that help people reach that level of understanding too, don't you? I mean, we can talk about that some other time, but you guys stay tuned because Chris has some courses coming up.
Yeah, I've got some. We're going to be doing something together, which we'll talk about in a later show. But I've got some stuff coming up on personal empowerment. If you go through YouTube, there is a short kind of taster of a workshop I do, and this could be a workshop that is one-on-one, or it could be with a group of people, called Ignite Your Potential, and it is purely designed to get you to the point where you can answer the questions like this: how do I begin? You see, and it's about empowering ourselves through our own actions, because we're in the age now, the age of Aquarius. It's ultimately about finding your inner guru, not following another guru, not following an external system. You see, so it's about getting your Ace of Wands on, tapping into what excites you and making it work. Now, I've got a question from Jamie Marsh. Thank you, Jamie. And this is a really simple question, but it's a big one. Cards around me moving and overcoming the fears that have been preventing it. Now, I'm going to assume, Jamie, that you know what your fears are because of the way you put the question. So we're going to look at the cards and see what they say. It's as simple as that. You may say to yourself, well, I don't know if I've got any fears, really. Some people don't, but we've all got fears, because fear is lack of knowledge. That's what fear is. So let me explain this real quick, because this might help a lot of you out there. I'm frightened of going to the orthodontist, okay? No, you're in fear because you don't know what he or she is going to do. Once you get there, you may be terrified, but you won't be in fear anymore because you'll know. Well, you might go, actually, that wasn't as bad. But the next time I go, see, so it's whenever we don't know, we are in fear. So we're all in fear, okay? Because none of us know what's coming, right? We some of us can get an angle on it, but if you listen to the weather forecast, right, they say the sun's going to be out, it's going to be 80 degrees, and you end up getting caught in the rain. But Jamie, for you particularly,
what was the gist of the question?
So the question is, cards around me moving and overcoming the fears that have been preventing it. So it's about moving.
So he is moving. I feel like I'm not hearing his question.
And so Jamie is a lady.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
And so the message: cards around me moving.
Cards, as in CARD.
Cards, yeah, cards. So pulling some cards.
Okay.
Around me moving and overcoming the fears that have been preventing it. Okay. So very often with moving, that's one of the most stressful things that we can encounter in our lives. And that opens all kinds of fear taps, doesn't it? The new neighborhood, will I like it? Will I fit in? Will I, all these will I's. So let's see what the first card again is the Four of Wands. I feel that the move here it's more than a move. This is you establishing your own creative independence. Now that could just be the freedom to create the life or the living space that you want. So that for me opens up all the files that relate to responsibility. And am I letting these people down? Should I be there for these people? But you know what? I don't think so, because again, I've got the Ace of Cups. Now the Ace of Cups, it asks us a very simple question. How do we support ourselves, in this case, at the level of water, which is tarot language for life force? Where's that flow? Okay, where's that flow coming from, and what stops that flow? So fear will stop us moving forwards. Absolutely. Fear will freeze us. But sometimes we have to look at our fear and understand that it's not really fear. It's just simply, I don't know what's coming next. And the only way to discover what's coming next is to do it. So this also is a card of conception. And in this case, it's conception of a new location or a new way of living. I do feel that there's a change of style, a change of habit as well with this. So it's more than just a physical move. There's a lot more going on here. But the world comes up, you know, and this is the successful completion of one chapter and the successful beginning of another chapter. Sometimes in order to move, we have to understand that we don't just have financial and material links to our property. We've got emotional and mental links as well. You know, my kids grew up here and I'm going to leave that. Well, you've got to come to peace with all of that. So make sure you put to bed, you come to peace with all the different frequencies of your connection to that house. Joanna.
I love how they're showing this to me from a different angle than from you, which is like 2 for 1 as far as I'm concerned. Because what I'm seeing the change. I'm seeing change 5 comes up to me, which could be connection to Jamie with May. But I'm seeing you like looking at the change and you're not quite sure what to do with it. Like, there's something to deal with, but you kind of are walking up. It's almost like you're walking around an issue. So that's message number 1. Message number 2. Am I understanding correctly, Chris, that Jamie has cards, like she put some cards or somebody did cards for her and that's what came up? Is that your understanding?
I think she's just asking us to pull cards.
Or to pull cards. Okay. Because what I'm feeling here is there is an anticipation of change. And anticipation of change comes various ways. We hear something, we feel something, somebody told, whatever it is. I feel like Jamie feels there is changes, perhaps the ones she's looking at and not knowing what to do with it. And because of it creates a certain confusion. So change is inevitable. Yes, there are changes coming. I just heard the word March. That could mean a move. However, I want to say, again, it's a similar question. Stop yourself for long enough to listen to you. What does your heart want to experience? And the reason why this is being said, I literally just feel like somebody breathed in my ear. Wow, wow. We've got some potent energies here. Because there is a frequency of change, you might want to focus on what it is that you want to achieve. In other words, you've got a lot of malleable energy. It's like the clay is ready to be molded. You're focusing attention in a certain way will eventually mold that energy, if you will, to a physical appearance. So spend less time worrying about what is happening and more time creating or focusing on what it is that you want to experience from a positive aspect. There.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Thanks very much for your question.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, okay, your turn.
No, it's your turn.
Oh, is it? Oh, excellent. Right.
Is it your turn?
Well, it is.
Oh, actually, no, it's not. Well, okay, I'll go. All right. Because this is a question also that's very common, I feel, for many people, including myself. And the question comes from Evelyn No, I believe, is the last name. Thank you so much for the question. It says, I would like to learn how to love myself unconditionally. I love this question because you're asking, you're ready to receive, therefore you're asking. Okay, so in simplest terms, I'm being asked to say this because it's very hard. There's not one thing that you can do to love yourself. Everybody has their own version of what that feels like and what that looks like. What you might want to consider at your own time is spend time in meditating and answering your own question, what would loving myself look and feel like? You will then come up with a whole bunch of ideas that will give you a corresponding feeling or emotion. You can then start pursuing those things, which is an active act of loving yourself. So it's almost like it's being, a principle is being shown here, almost like a formula. And the formula will work for everybody, but each person will have a different answer for themselves. Let me just see if there's something that they want me to add to this. Sprinkle happiness along the top. What does that mean? Thank you, brilliant. Never forget to celebrate your joyous moments. Never forget to be proud of yourself, for those are the things that you call self-love. Ooh, I just got chills.
There you go. Follow that. Well, I got the 9 of Cups, which is happiness. I also got the Ace of Wands, which is be yourself. So absolutely yes to what Joanna said. Love looks, I use the word accept. You've got to accept yourself. Write a list of all the things that you would expect your lover to bring to your life. Emotionally, open, witty, intelligent, all that stuff, and then realize that you can give yourself all of those things right now. And if you don't think you can, then start doing it. Because what will happen when you accept yourself, so can you stand in front of the mirror and say, well, I really love myself, but, then that's not acceptance, okay? As Joanna said, focus on the happiness, right? Your moments of happiness will become more. We start off on a journey of self-discovery, which is what it is. And we have moments of happiness. But then gradually, if we do the job right, the moments become like a constant crescendo. And then happiness becomes a state of being. So when you practice that inner state of being, you will create. Wands is creativity. You will create that new aura. And of course, whenever you create a new energy within you, it is reflected back at you. So you will find yourself surrounded by people that love themselves unconditionally and therefore love and accept you unconditionally. And this has got nothing to do with romantic love necessarily, but one can spring from that, of course. But it's about having that collaboration of people around you that just want to see you do well, and you want to see them do well. And there is no other reason. That's the transaction. There is no other reason. It's just, we just want to see everybody do well. So practice happiness. That's the answer. What does that look like to you? And just be, all right? Again, we're often sold the lie that you need to do something to get to a point where you can attain enlightenment. No, enlightenment's open to all of us right now when we just accept. This is another thing I talk about where I get negative response sometimes. We are all perfect now. Mm-hmm. Somebody in the back goes, there's no such thing as being perfect.
Yeah, well, there is. Imperfection is perfect.
Absolutely. It's not about judgment. Mm-hmm. It's not about judgment. It's about you. You are perfect. We are all perfect in the moment. Play with that.
Beautifully said.
And that's the truth. That is the truth.
What I would like to add to that, because I feel it's very important. Sometimes being loving to yourself also means doing something that initially feels very uncomfortable. For example, sometimes being loving to yourself means saying no to an abusive spouse. So there is somebody out there who will hear this and go, okay, because I'm saying this for a reason. So loving yourself isn't always lovey-dovey and roses everywhere and, sparkles and all that and unicorns. No, sometimes it is uncomfortable and it's not pretty. But at the end of the day, it's a very loving act to you. So just something to ponder.
Yeah, and it's got to be all about you as well. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that doesn't mean they're being selfish, right? But at the end of the day, I find people, and I feel this will help a lot of people, and I see this especially last few months. Many people are sleepwalking, and what that means essentially is they forgot the reason to live. They go to make money, they go take care of their family, they go take care of their chores. They get no enjoyment from being alive. Now, I know somebody there will hear me and say, you don't know what it's like to be in my position. You're absolutely correct. I have no clue. All I can do is I can say that when we focus on being a victim, we will be one as long as we will be one, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. Really important. It's that inner happiness. Practice happiness, you know? Mm-hmm. And if you think you've got nothing to be happy about, well, at least you're able to think that. So you're alive. That's a good place to start.
I needed to learn how to stand up for myself, and it was bloody scary at first.
Yeah. And I think what you'll also find is that I personally, and I'm sure it's the same for Joanna, we say these things, and you may think, yeah, it's easy for you to say because you've obviously got it all sorted out. We don't. You know? The reason that we're doing this stuff is because we're on this journey too. And we might be a little bit further on, but that's great because we can just say, well, maybe try this, and you know, you won't go through such a hard time. But you know what it's like. Any of you that have got kids out there, you tell your kids don't do it until you're blue in the face. You're still going to do it because the only way we learn is through experience. But you know, practice happiness, kids. It pays off. Now I've got another. This is a really. I love this question for another reason. This is from May 570. I always love it when people put numbers after their names.
Numbers.
How many more Mays are there out there? Anyway, you're 570, so that's great. Thank you for your question, mate. You are a YouTube subscriber, and I love that. I'd love to submit a question. I have been single for over 23 years. Wow. I'm now in my late 40s. Any hope in hell of ever finding anyone on my wavelength, please? Thank you. May 570. I love that question. So you've learned a lot about yourself in the past 23 years, right?
I love this question. Oh my God.
You're going to get it now, both barrels, I guess. And you're in your late 40s. So, you know, you've only just grown up. So that's okay. You've just been through your second Saturn opposition, which has made you really wake up and go, this is what I want. And you've come to that point where you've realised, I want someone on my wavelength. Now, that can look very interesting. And let me tell you why. Let's talk about physics. You know what a wavelength is, right? It's the measure between two peaks of a wave. Okay? So that's a wavelength. Now, you may find that you are attracting people that are not resonating at the high peak of your wavelength, but are resonating at the low trough of your wavelength. So they are diametrically opposed to where you're at. And you may say, you know, I'm just meeting all the wrong people, but you're just meeting the kind of inversion of yourself. So how do you get to that peak experience? Well, it's not about finding the high point. It's about finding the mid-range. So I need somebody that's just maybe different enough so that we can have those interesting conversations. Maybe I need to find somebody that is just a little bit more materially minded so that we can talk about and have the experiences together. Because if you meet somebody that's exactly the same, and I'm getting images of the Austin Powers movie now where he comes back in, there's two Austin Powers with the Elizabeth Hurley character, so that's kind of off-putting. But you know, find your midpoint. So here I am at my high point, here I am at my low point, this is my midpoint. And look for someone, let someone in. I'm obviously, by your very appearance on this channel, you are spiritually minded. And sometimes we can go too far into the spiritual aspect of things. We need to remember that we're material beings. We are, as police sang, spirits in a material world. So we are here to have a material experience that our higher self, our spirit, can learn from. So throw yourself into the material aspects of it as well, okay? So I'm sure Joanna will add to this.
Oh, my turn?
Your turn.
All right. When I tuned into you, the message I got very clearly, first and foremost, was, what is it about yourself that you are denying and therefore don't show up in the world? In other words, what do you think is missing inside of you so that you hide? There's an element here, and I'm going to approach it differently. We already know that a vibration attracts like vibration, and that can be explained in various ways. But at the end of the day, if you have chosen, notice I said chosen in these things, if you have chosen to be single, you have chosen it for a reason. Now, choice probably wasn't conscious, or you chose consciously because somebody broke you off a few too many times and you said, no, thank you. Point is, you have kept yourself from a relationship, not consciously and not logically, subconsciously speaking. So you might want to ask yourself this: what is it about a potential long-term relationship that scares me? And you might find an answer that you may be surprised with. Sometimes the very things that we are after are the very things that we fear having the most. We just don't know it on a conscious level. Now, I can zoom in when I'm in one-on-one, but that's what's being shown to me. So there is obviously some unresolved stuff, like we all have, right? What do you got?
Yeah, I can back that up with the 10 of Wands. So carrying, could be trying too hard or carrying too many responsibilities into the situation. And it is true, the ideal people and the ideal things show up in our lives when we're not looking for them. I think Joanna's advice is spot on. You will undoubtedly come back and feed back to us. We both love a wedding. Okay, we're not fortune tellers, but I can tell you that if you look at those aspects and what it is you're scared of, I do feel that you need a unconventional relationship. I will say that. I don't think it's a conventional relationship for you. I think you're in a place in your life where you know what you want, and you may be finding that you actually fear having that because it involves a great deal of trust. And so look at trust and how you trust others as well. All right.
And perhaps lack of independence or loss of independence.
So we are coming up to the end of this session, and don't worry, because we're going to be back in a few days with two. So we've got plenty more questions to go through, but
send them some more questions.
Send us your questions, because the bottom line is, for as long as you keep sending questions, we'll keep making these, and it may be in due course, when everybody kind of gets used to the format, we may do a live one, which will be fun. But for now, I'll just hand you over to Joanna. If you've got anything you want to say, Joanna, before we disappear.
No, thank you so much for sending us your questions. Like Chris and I mentioned before, though these may not be, your questions may not have been answered specifically, and even if you have your question answered, listen to it with your heart after listening to it with your mind, because that's naturally what happens. And just look at it from a bigger perspective, because sometimes we can't see things, and that's usually why we're asking. I believe that the way I work, it's to help people see things from a different perspective, to help you shift how you see yourself and then the world. And Chris, you have a different angle, or not a different, but you add on top of that. So I just feel what I'm trying to say in simple terms is, take these answers and kind of look how they can apply in your life in general.
Yeah, definitely. It's some people refer to it as feeling into the subject, and that can, for many people, be quite a vague instruction. So just sit and listen without judgment, listen without prejudice, and see how it impacts you, because there's wisdom in there. All right, so we've got plenty more questions to go through. We'll be back in a few days. Keep sending us your questions, and this has been a really, really interesting experience, first of many. So thank you so much for watching. We'll see
Oh,
you.
and if you are listening to this and you have not subscribed to my newsletter, that's the only way that you can get your question answered. So if you can go to my site and then you can send us questions. So just wanted to throw it out there.
Yeah. Or,
all right.
You'll see the websites come up. They will have come up across the bottom of the screen through the video. So subscribe to Joanna, and you can also send a message to my website. Address is below, but possibly for ease and simplicity, let's keep it all in one place. Okay. All right. We'll see you all again real soon. Thank you so much.
See you guys. Bye.